Eat, sleep, bet, repeat. That's how we get down on the opening line at EliteSportsBetting.com. I'll be your host, Benny Ricciardi, and today we're going to talk a little XFL action. You know, NBA, obviously, something we're not going to see any of for the next couple weeks here, Tyler, but the XFL is still going to play. And I thought you said this morning, isn't there at least one game where they're playing in an empty stadium today, too?
Yeah, the state of Washington is holding back the amount of people gatherings to 250 plus. That's their soft limit, I think, that they're doing, or hard limit. I'm not sure. But yeah, that stadium should be pretty much empty. We'll see if the rest of the games play, but let's go forward with the show, assuming that every game goes. You're muted.
Sorry, I was muted there a little bit. Yeah, if anything, hopefully we can get back to a little bit of normalcy here. And, we're going to keep banging out this content for XFL until they decide they're going to cancel it. And if that happens, then, you know what, we'll figure out what else to do. I've been watching a lot of the League of Legends lately. So
Yep.
hopefully we can roll over to some esports talk if we have to. But let's start with some football here. First game, Houston Roughnecks, New York Guardians. Roughnecks 6.5-point favorites in this game, over under a 47. Houston Roughnecks 5-0. New York Guardians starting to show a little bit of life. I mean, they beat Tampa Bay, then they had two losses to DC and St. Louis, and people kind of counted them out. And then they came back and beat two pretty decent teams in Dallas and LA in the last 2 weeks here. So, they are kind of surging, moving in the right direction, and a lot of those wins have been at home where they are here today. So, can the New York Guardians be the team that finally knocks off the Houston Roughnecks?
I don't know, but it's going to be a close game. The 6.5 spread, I think, is spot on. Since we've seen Luis Perez start at quarterback for the Guardians, it's definitely been a different team compared to what we saw with Matt McGloin.
Mm-hmm.
But Houston's offense has been rolling on all cylinders. It's really hard to see them slowing down at any pace. Philip Walker's playing like an MVP, leading the league in passing yardage, passing touchdowns. If he's not the league MVP, it's got to be Cam Phillips, who scored 9 touchdowns in 5 games.
Mm-hmm.
You can just kind of start your DFS lineups with Phillips and build from there in cash games. The other receivers are also doing really well. Sam Mobley was the guy that took over for Sammy Coates last week. He had a hamstring injury. He's still limited in practices. So maybe we get another week of Mobley as a bargain play. Khalil Lewis, Nick Holley, they're the 2 slot receivers. They've been doing really well so far as well. And the ground game has been basically an afterthought almost, with Houston passing so heavily. But James Butler has been just about the only usable guy there. You can't really bank on Andre Williams due to his 0 in the receiving game. As far as the Guardians side of the game, I think there's a strong chance they get close to the 6.5, but I took Houston at minus 6.5 when these lines first opened, thinking that I don't know if Luis Perez can consistently score against this defense. Like, Houston's pass defense, they're ranked number 1 in coverage per PFF's metrics. They're allowing the second lowest yards per attempt against, their first and lowest QB rating against, and they've mustered a league high 15 sacks to date. So Perez is going to have his hands full here. And it's not like his receivers have really been bailing him out. We saw Mikhail McKay make some plays. Colby Pearson broke it was basically a broken play where he went 80 yards for a score last week. We just need these 2 guys to step up. And I'm not sure if Perez can get these guys to do that. I don't know. That's my biggest question mark entering the week. I think you want to play your Houston guys as normal. Maybe you bring it back with Mikhail McKay and Colby Pearson, just because they've seen price reductions too. And it makes it a little bit more of a feasible GPP play with the game stack.
Yeah, and especially because this is the highest total on the board here today at 47 of all these games this week. So you definitely want exposures to that. And, the other thing too, I mean, you mentioned we're not sure if New York's going to be able to keep up with Houston and score points against Houston. I have no problem thinking Houston's going to put up points because they've done it against everybody else here today too. So if you don't think the Guardians can keep up with them in a shootout, that's why 6.5 is not that bad of a number to take. So I'm actually going to be willing to take it. I'll be on the Roughnecks this week because I got all this money that I'm not gambling on NBA. So I got to put it somewhere basically. All right, so let's talk about the next game here. We got the St. Louis Battlehawks going in to take on the Tampa Bay Vipers. These are 2 teams that are kind of moving in opposite directions right now. I mean, St. Louis started out hot. They beat Dallas, New York, and Seattle. They lost to D.C. and Houston. Tampa Bay started out 0-3, and then they whipped up on D.C. 25-0 in a game that kind of surprised everybody. They lost a close game to Houston the week before that, a very good Houston team, and then they just lost a close game at L.A. 41-34. So I know it doesn't look all that great at 1-4 on paper, but they've been playing a lot better the last couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The Vipers have been playing really well in terms of like total yardage accumulated. In fact, they lead the league in that, but just the points just haven't been there, and that could change, especially in a matchup like this one against the Battlehawks, who, like you said, have been spiraling down slightly. The good thing, if you're interested in playing Jordan Ta'amu this week, is that in games where the spread's been within plus or minus 7 points, he's scored 20, 31, and 23 DK points. And this spread's with 3 points currently. So I think this is a good chance to take Ta'amu if you're interested in him for DFS. In the 3 games with a spread outside that plus minus 7 points, Ta'amu has scored 6 and 10. So you definitely want to play him in competitive situations, kind of like Russell Wilson, a much watered down Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Last week we saw LaDainian Washington finally take over as the team leader in terms of target share, finally beating slot receiver DeMornay Pearson-L. Those are the 2 guys you want to target here because they're both hovering around the 20% target share rate. Washington posted his first 100-yard game of the season, but I mean, outside of a blowout, he's averaging about 6.8 targets per game, 6,800 price tag. I think he's a fine play this week. Pearson-L, he also saw a big price reduction. Cheapest he's been over the last month now at 8K. That's because he came off a -1 receiving yard outing last week. He's definitely due for a bounce back here in what should be a competitive environment. And the backs here, though, Matt Jones, Christine Michael, you just can't really use them considering Ta'amu is targeting his running backs just 7.4% of the time. They have absolutely no floor if they don't reach the end zone.
Yeah.
They're just too volatile unless you're trying to play some sneaky Battlehawks Vipers.
Yeah, completely touchdown dependent, and the lack of the passing game usage. There's just so many. Basically, almost every other running back is a better play with that.
Right. And honestly, the backfields are really thin this week, so I think there's really only a handful of backs you really want to focus on. I'll write more about that in my matchups column that you can read over on Fantasy Guru. As far as the Tampa Bay Vipers side of the ball, Taylor Cornelius, he's actually been kind of surprising as far as like his rushing floor and his pass attempts, 30-plus pass attempts. He's reached a rushing touchdown in 3 straight games. The St. Louis pass defense, it's pretty good in the fact that they're allowing league lows in both total passing yards allowed and yards per attempt. So the passing ceiling is questionable, but the good thing about Tampa Bay is it's really tightly correlated with their 3 receivers, Daniel Williams, Jalen Tolliver, and Reese Horn. Those are the 3 main horses for the Vipers. They're all over a 20% target share. They're all inside the top 10 in receptions, receiving yards, fantasy points. These guys are just the narrow concentration of targets makes these guys all fantasy viable. Really like Williams.
I was going to say, if you had to pick one, who's the most fantasy relevant of them?
I think Reese Horn has the highest floor for cash games, but I really like Williams and Tolliver for tournaments.
Okay. Just making while you talk here because I gotta play some more lineups this week. So.
Right. One good thing about Reese Horn is he has 5+ receptions in 4 straight games, 11 targets last week. The slot cornerback that he's going to be facing he has given up touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 games. 6,100. He's not a bad price.
Okay, I like that. Definitely get him in there. Now,
then,
with the game here, with St. Louis being favored by 3.5, 42 over under, anything on the betting side you're looking at?
This is a close one. I could see this game going either way. The Vipers have routinely been very close in covering spreads. I kind of want to lean here with the +3 for Tampa Bay, but it's not a matchup I'd be willing to take. Maybe if you have the extra itch with no NBA going on and you want to play something, I'd go Vipers +3, but it's not a play I'm going to recommend.
Yeah, I actually saw 3.5. That was the side that I was kind of looking at taking here, but I like the Houston Roughnecks bet much better. So if that one hits and I got house money to play with, and like you said, no NBA, so nothing to do in the afternoon, I'll probably check that one out as well on Saturday. So let's move on to the Sunday games here. Dallas Renegades, DC Defenders. Dallas, let's see. Dallas beat St. Louis to start, or they lost to St. Louis to start, then they beat LA and Seattle, wound up losing to Houston and New York. The Defenders, I have no idea what's going on with this team. They beat a pretty good St. Louis team last week, so that was good. They got blown out by Tampa Bay the week before. They got blown out by LA the week before that. And in going into week 3 of the season, most people thought this was the team that had the best chance to win it all. So this is one of those teams that I don't know. When I think they're going to play well, they go out there and look like crap. So what are we looking at with DC here? I've been wrong on them 3 weeks in a row.
Yeah, it's been gross for DC. We saw Pep Hamilton bench Cardale Jones last week, just 2 drives into the game after throwing an interception. He said that was the plan all along, just let Cardale play 2 drives. But come on, are you really going to do that with your starter? Mm-hmm. Jones is reportedly going to start again this week in week 6, but you can't really play him in any kind of DFS tournaments unless you're playing like 150 max and just trying to be super contrarian for the sake of being contrarian.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, Tyree Jackson threw just 39 yards in relief of him. You can't really use him either. He didn't really do much rushing with the ball either. I mean, Jackson threw 2.8 yards per attempt. Like that's nothing. You can't really use them. And if Jackson's going to take over for Cardale again, that means you can't really use any of these receivers for DFS purposes, just because there's no like real legitimate floor here.
I mean, in 3 weeks, the last 3 weeks, they've scored 24 points, not per week, like in a total of 24 points in 3 weeks. So, I mean, the offense just really isn't there. They're just not doing anything.
Absolutely. I guess if you wanted to play somebody, maybe you go with Rashad Ross just because he leads the league in 20-plus yard targets, and he's priced down now after failing to do anything in the last few weeks. And the Renegades pass coverage unit ranks bottom 3 per PFF. Okay. But I would only probably do that if I was doing a 20 max kind of entry. If we look at
more of a GPP flyer thing than a cash game play.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking at the Dallas side with Philip Nelson under center, I mean, this offense just cannot get things done with him there. Mm-hmm. The Renegades have managed 9 points against St. Louis in week 1, 12 points against New York in week 5. Those are the 2 weeks he started. Those points have consisted of 5 field goals and 1 kick return touchdown. So he's led 0 offensive scoring drives. I love hitting the under on this 35 for the Dallas DC Defenders game. Not only are both these offenses inept, they've also both gone 4-1 on unders. So I think that's a really safe play, hitting the under here on 35, despite it being the only game in the 30s right now.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a very low number. I mean, every other game, 42, 45 and a half, 47. So it's already well below what the other games are, but you can't really disagree with you right now. Neither one of these teams move football.
Yeah, the only way I think we get this wrong is if a defensive player like comes back for a touchdown or something. But I don't know. I don't think either of these offenses has a good shot at moving the ball with any kind of sustainability.
So would you even bother with the 4 points? DC favored by 4 in this one. Just stay away from it because, I mean, this is just a very likely shit show where a defensive touchdown or a kick return might actually be the difference in this game.
I totally agree with that. I'm staying away from the spreads. Just hitting the under here at 35.
All right, fair enough. So that brings us to the last game we got here. LA Wildcats, Seattle Dragons. LA's had some tough losses here. They are coming off a win against Tampa Bay last week at home. They did beat up on DC, who we, just previously talked about. They lost to New York. They lost to Dallas. They lost to Houston. Now they face the Seattle team, who also has 4 losses here. You're looking at losses to DC, Dallas, St. Louis, and Houston. Their only win coming against Tampa Bay earlier in the year when Tampa Bay wasn't playing that well. I don't really have a lean either way in this game, to be honest with you. So I'll leave it up to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Wildcats. I got them at minus 2.5. They might be minus 3 now, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I like their ability to pass the ball. Josh Johnson, ever since coming in week 2, he leads the league in both passing yards per game and yards per attempt. So he's throwing the ball downfield. Also leads the league with a 123.9 QB rating when throwing on deep passes. 23% deep rate. So he's throwing the ball downfield pretty frequently. He might even be getting Nelson Spruce back, the highly targeted slot receiver that's been missing the last 2 weeks. But with Spruce, Trey McBride, Jordan Smallwood, Saeed Blacknail for some spontaneous touchdowns, there's just such a high potential for this offense to get going. I really just like this passing game, especially considering the Seattle pass defense. They're allowing a league high in yards per attempt, and they're tied for the most passing touchdowns allowed. Okay. So Josh Johnson is one of my favorite QB plays of the week, but you got to pay up to get him. One other note here is it's like a full-fledged committee for the running backfield here. It's not a area you really want to target. So I think you just want to kind of target the pass catchers here for LA. On the Seattle side, we saw BJ Daniels play last week. He finally got the start over Brandon Silvers. Seattle's 23 points last week were the most they've scored all season. But one thing that's notable about Daniels, he had a 20.6 DK point outing for the week. But one thing was they forced a turnover on Houston where the defender ran it back to the 1-yard line. Daniels plunged it in from the 1 yard. Don't know if that's really sustainable. I kind of view him more as a 15 to 16 point kind of guy.
Okay.
He went 10 for 30 with 2 rushing touchdowns last week, which definitely inflated his fantasy total. But the passing numbers were not really there. 14 for 22, 114 passing yards, 0 TDs. Just something to keep in mind. So I'm not really interested in any of his pass catchers here. Keenan Reynolds, 1 reception on 3 targets. He's just been running ghost routes pretty much out there. Austin Prohl, he's been their primary slot receiver. He would be the only Seattle receiver I'd have minor interest in, but I don't think you need to go there. He only had 3 catches last week. And then the backfield for Seattle's been a mess all season with the three-headed backfield.
All right, so let me ask you this then in this game. So there's a good chance that Seattle's probably not going to put up a lot of points in this one. We got a 45.5 over under, but you do like the LA offense a lot. Do you like the Seattle offense enough to put up some points that we get to the over here, or is this one where you just think it's probably better to take the the -2.5, -3, whatever we can find on the LA side?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the spread here. I think LA has a good shot at putting up 25 plus points here.
Right.
Seattle, though, it's a question mark as to how efficient Daniels can be in a second start. Uh, the Wildcats' pass defense has been kind of all over the map, so like they've allowed points. So I wouldn't be shocked if they hit the over here, but it's not a bet I'm eager to take.
Yeah, so you'd rather just stick to the side on this one. That's probably where we feel the edge is a little bit bigger, and that pretty much sums it up. So remember, if you guys are looking for some information, especially with no NBA going on this week, you can go over to fantasyguru.com. Tyler has all his rankings over there. You get articles from guys like Tyler and Armando and Jeff Mann putting all their stuff down for the XFL. I don't know if we have any plans for maybe to make that free this week or so. I'll find out from management on that. But either way, if you're a Fantasy Guru subscriber, sign up for the VIP package. Also gets you access to all the baseball stuff, and I know that that's what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the day is kind of getting caught up on some of my baseball research. So for Tyler, this is Benny signing off for another episode of The Opening Line at EliteSportsBetting.com.